In a world where political debates often feel like shouting matches, there was one woman who stood out for her calm and thoughtful approach, Karoline Leavitt. Karoline wasn't just another name in the crowded landscape of commentators. She had carved a niche for herself with her ability to break down complex issues into simple, relatable terms. Her rise to fame wasn't overnight. It was the result of years of hard work, dedication, and an unwavering belief in the power of respectful dialogue. Karoline grew up in a small town, where she learned early on the value of listening before speaking. Her parents, both teachers, instilled in her a love for learning and critical thinking. They encouraged her to question everything, but also taught her to do so respectfully. This upbringing shaped Karoline into someone who valued facts over emotions and civility over chaos. As she entered adulthood, she pursued a career in journalism, hoping to bring clarity to topics that often left people confused or frustrated. Her big break came when she started appearing as a guest on various news programs. At first, producers were hesitant to book her. They worried she might be too soft-spoken to hold her own against louder, more aggressive personalities. But they soon realized that Karoline's quiet confidence was exactly what made her stand out. Viewers loved how she could dismantle flawed arguments without raising her voice or resorting to personal attacks. It wasn't long before she became a regular face on television, and her fan base grew exponentially. On the other side of the aisle was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, better known as AOC. Unlike Karoline, AOC had burst onto the scene with a fiery energy that captivated millions. Her speeches were electrifying, filled with bold promises and calls for radical change. She spoke passionately about issues like climate change, income inequality, and social justice, resonating deeply with younger generations who felt disillusioned by traditional politics. AOC's charisma and unapologetic stance earned her legions of supporters, but also plenty of critics who accused her of being unrealistic or overly pessimistic about America's future. The contrast between these two women couldn't have been starker. Karoline represented measured optimism, while AOC embodied urgent activism. Both were intelligent, driven, and fiercely committed to their beliefs, but their methods couldn't have been more different. And yet, despite their differences, neither could deny the impact the other had on public discourse. One day, fate brought them together in a setting neither could have anticipated: a live television debate that would go down in history. Heartwarming. Show's producers had been looking for a way to spark meaningful conversation about the state of America, and booking both Karoline and AOC seemed like the perfect recipe for engagement. Little did they know that this decision would lead to one of the most memorable moments in modern media. As the date of the broadcast approached, anticipation built among fans of both women. Social media buzzed with predictions about who would come out on top. Would Karoline's calm logic win over skeptics, or would AOC's fiery rhetoric ignite a movement? Even those who didn't typically follow politics tuned in, curious to see how the clash of styles would play out. When the day finally arrived, the studio was packed with crew members adjusting lights and cameras, guests rehearsing their talking points, and nervous energy filling the air. Karoline arrived early, dressed impeccably in a tailored blazer and heels. She greeted everyone warmly, exchanging pleasantries with the host and fellow panelists. Despite the pressure, she appeared completely at ease, scrolling through notes, on her phone, and occasionally jotting something down in a leather-bound notebook. AOC, meanwhile, swept into the room with her signature confidence. Dressed in a bright outfit that matched her vibrant personality, she immediately drew attention. Cameras flashed as reporters tried to capture candid shots, and she smiled graciously, waving to the crowd. Though outwardly composed, those close to her knew she was mentally preparing for the challenge ahead. As the clock ticked closer to airtime, the atmosphere grew tense. The moderator gave a quick briefing, reminding everyone of the rules. Stay focused, avoid interruptions, and keep responses concise. But deep down, everyone suspected that this particular episode wouldn't stick to the script. With such strong personalities involved, anything could happen, and the world would be watching. The stage was set, the lights were on, and the cameras began rolling. What followed was a moment that would leave an indelible mark not only on the participants, but also on the countless viewers glued to their screens. For Karoline, it was an opportunity to prove that civility and intelligence could still cut through the noise. For AOC, it was a chance to defend her vision of a better America. And for the audience, it was a front-row seat to a battle of ideas that reflected the very soul of the nation. As the cameras rolled and the bright studio lights illuminated the panel, the host introduced the topic of the day: the state of America, progress or decline. The audience leaned forward in anticipation, knowing that the lineup of guests promised a lively discussion. AOC sat confidently on one side of the table, her posture relaxed but commanding. Across from her, Karoline Leavitt adjusted her notes with quiet precision, her calm demeanor masking the intensity brewing beneath the surface. The moderator opened the floor to AOC first, giving her the opportunity to set the tone. Without hesitation, she launched into a passionate critique of the current state of the nation. Her voice carried conviction as she painted a picture of a country riddled with systemic failures. She spoke about the widening gap between the rich and poor, pointing out how millions of Americans struggle to afford basic necessities like healthcare and housing. She highlighted environmental crises, emphasizing the urgency of addressing climate change before it was too late. And she didn't shy away from discussing racial injustice, arguing that centuries-old inequalities continued to plague society. AOC's words resonated deeply with many viewers. Her delivery was powerful, her arguments rooted in emotion and experience. Clips of her fiery speeches at rallies and congressional hearings had already gone viral, and this performance was no different. As she spoke, the energy in the room shifted. Some nodded in agreement while others exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the weight of her accusations. It was clear that AOC wasn't just criticizing policies, she was challenging the very foundation of what it meant to be American. When AOC finished, the moderator turned to Karoline, inviting her to respond. For a moment, there was silence. Karoline sat still, her pen resting lightly against her notebook. She looked thoughtful, almost serene, as if she were processing not just the words spoken but also the emotions behind them. Then, with a small smile, she began to speak. Her voice was steady, her tone measured. "I appreciate Representative Ocasio-Cortez's passion," she said, nodding respectfully toward AOC. "There's no denying that we face significant challenges as a nation, but I believe it's equally important to acknowledge the progress we've made and continue to make." Karoline's opening statement caught everyone off guard. Instead of launching directly into a rebuttal, she chose to validate some of AOC's concerns. This wasn't a tactic designed to appease. Rather, it was a deliberate effort to build common ground. By acknowledging the validity of certain criticisms, Karoline positioned herself not as an opponent but as someone genuinely invested in finding solutions. She then pivoted to her main argument, weaving together statistics, historical, context, and personal anecdotes. She pointed out that while income inequality remained a pressing issue, poverty rates had declined significantly over the past few decades due to economic growth and social programs. She cited advancements in renewable energy technology, noting that the United States had become a global leader in clean energy innovation, despite lingering challenges. And when addressing racial injustice, she highlighted grassroots movements and bipartisan efforts aimed at reform, stressing that change often required patience and persistence. What made Karoline's response so compelling wasn't just the substance of her arguments, it was her delivery. Unlike AOC's fiery rhetoric, which relied heavily on emotional appeal, Karoline adopted a more analytical approach. She spoke slowly, enunciating each word carefully, ensuring that her points landed with clarity. Her body language reinforced her message. She leaned slightly forward when making key statements, used subtle hand gestures to emphasize transitions, and maintained eye contact with both AOC and the camera. It was as if she were speaking directly to every viewer at home, inviting them to consider her perspective without feeling attacked. AOC listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Karoline concluded her remarks, the moderator asked for a follow-up. AOC wasted no time seizing the opportunity. "With all due respect," she began, her tone sharpening, "acknowledging progress doesn't erase the reality of suffering. Telling people to be patient isn't enough when they're struggling to survive right now." The tension in the room thickened. AOC's rebuttal was sharp, cutting straight to the heart of Karoline's argument. She accused Karoline of glossing over the urgency of the issues, suggesting that her focus on incremental progress risked complacency. "We can't wait for slow reforms," AOC insisted. "People are dying, communities are being destroyed, and our planet is on fire. We need bold action today, not promises for tomorrow." Karoline didn't flinch. If anything, her composure seemed to deepen. She took a brief pause, as though allowing AOC's words to sink in fully. Then, with the same steady voice, she replied, "Bold action is necessary, I agree completely. But bold action must also be sustainable. History shows us that sweeping changes implemented without careful planning often lead to unintended consequences. What we need is a balance, urgency tempered by wisdom." This exchange marked a turning point in the debate. Up until now, the conversation had been largely one-sided, with AOC dominating the narrative through sheer force of personality. But Karoline's calm yet unyielding responses began to shift the dynamic. Viewers who had initially been swayed by AOC's emotional appeals found themselves reconsidering their stance. Could there be merit in taking a more measured approach? Was it possible to address urgent problems without sacrificing long-term stability? The back and forth continued, each woman presenting her case with increasing fervor. AOC doubled down on her call for immediate transformative change, invoking stories of individuals and families affected by systemic failures. Karoline countered with data-driven examples of successful reforms achieved through collaboration and perseverance. Their styles couldn't have been more different, one fueled by passion, the other guided by reason, but both undeniably effective in their own ways. As the segment unfolded, social media erupted with reactions. Clips of the debate spread like wildfire, sparking heated discussions across platforms. Supporters of AOC praised her unwavering commitment to justice, calling her the voice of a generation. Fans of Karoline lauded her ability to remain composed under pressure, hailing her as a beacon of rationality in turbulent times. Even neutral observers admitted that the clash was unlike anything they'd seen before, a true meeting of minds that forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about the nation's strengths and weaknesses. By the time the moderator attempted to steer the conversation back on track, the energy in the room was electric. The audience, whether physically present or watching from afar, was hooked. This wasn't just another political debate. It was a battle of ideologies, a microcosm of the larger cultural divide gripping the country. And as the clock ticked closer to the end of the segment, one thing became abundantly clear. Neither Karoline nor AOC was backing down anytime soon. Though the debate would eventually conclude, its impact lingered far beyond the confines of the studio. For Karoline, it was a defining moment that solidified her reputation as a formidable thinker and communicator. For AOC, it reinforced her role as a catalyst for change, unafraid to challenge the status quo. And for the millions of people tuning in, it served as a reminder that meaningful conversations require not only courage but also empathy, intelligence, and a willingness to listen, even when it's hard. As the debate rolled on, the tension in the room reached a boiling point. The exchange between Karoline Leavitt and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had shifted from a polite discussion into a high-stakes ideological showdown. AOC's fiery rhetoric continued to dominate, but Karoline's calm, methodical responses were beginning to chip away at the narrative. Each woman was determined to make her case heard, and neither showed any signs of backing down. AOC leaned forward, her eyes locked, onto Karoline as she delivered her next salvo. "You keep talking about progress," she said, her voice rising with intensity. "But what does that even mean for someone who can't afford insulin or has to work 3 jobs just to survive? Progress doesn't mean anything if it leaves people behind." Her words struck a chord, not just with those in the studio but also with viewers watching at home. She spoke directly to the struggles of everyday Americans, painting a vivid picture of hardship that many could relate to. Karoline listened intently, her expression thoughtful rather than defensive. When it was her turn to respond, she took a deep breath before speaking. "I hear you, Representative Ocasio-Cortez," she began, her tone measured but firm. "And I agree. Progress must be inclusive. But let's not confuse pointing out problems with solving them. Highlighting flaws without offering realistic solutions only perpetuates despair. We need action, yes, but we also need a plan." This was where Karoline truly shone. Instead of simply countering AOC's emotional appeals, she introduced concrete examples of how systemic issues had been addressed successfully in the past. She cited programs like Social Security and Medicare, which had faced skepticism during their inception but ultimately transformed millions of lives. She talked about bipartisan efforts to combat climate change, such as investments in renewable energy infrastructure that created jobs while reducing carbon emissions. And she emphasized the importance of grassroots movements working alongside policymakers to drive lasting change. Her arguments weren't just theoretical, they were grounded in real-world outcomes. For instance, she pointed to cities like Pittsburgh, which had transitioned from an industrial wasteland to a hub of innovation thanks to strategic planning and community involvement. Change isn't easy, Karoline admitted. It takes time, effort, and collaboration. But when we focus on practical solutions instead of divisive rhetoric, we see results. AOC wasn't about to let Karoline's points go unchallenged. With a raised eyebrow, she shot back. "So you're saying we should sit back and wait for trickle-down solutions? That's exactly the kind of thinking that got us into this mess in the first place." Her accusation hung heavy in the air, and for a moment it seemed like Karoline might falter under the weight of such a direct attack. But Karoline didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled faintly, almost as if she'd anticipated the critique. "Trickle-down economics is not what I'm advocating for," she clarified. "What I'm saying is that sweeping declarations without actionable steps are counterproductive. If we want to tackle income inequality, for example, we need policies that empower workers, invest in education, and promote entrepreneurship, not just slogans that sound good on TV." The audience could feel the stakes rising with every exchange. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a clash of worldviews. AOC represented the urgency of now, demanding immediate action to address pressing crises. Karoline embodied the patience of process, arguing that meaningful change required careful planning and sustained effort. Both perspectives had merit, and both resonated deeply with different segments of the population. At one point, the moderator tried to interject, sensing that the conversation was veering toward a deadlock. "Let's bring this back to the central question," he suggested. "Do you believe America is fundamentally broken, or is it capable of self-correction?" AOC seized the opportunity to reiterate her stance. "America is full of potential, but its systems are failing too many people," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "We have the resources, the talent, and the ingenuity to fix these problems. What we lack is political will. Until we hold our leaders accountable and demand bold action, nothing will change." Karoline nodded thoughtfully before responding. "I agree that accountability is crucial," she said. "But I also believe in the resilience of the American spirit. Look at how communities come together after natural disasters, or how small businesses adapt during economic downturns. Yes, there are challenges, but there's also hope. And that hope comes from recognizing what works and building on it, rather than tearing everything down and starting from scratch." The contrast between their approaches couldn't have been clearer. AOC's vision was revolutionary, calling for a complete overhaul of existing systems. Karoline's approach was evolutionary, emphasizing gradual improvements within the current framework. While AOC inspired passion and urgency, Karoline appealed to reason and pragmatism. It was a classic battle between idealism and realism, each side presenting compelling arguments that left viewers grappling with tough questions. Social media exploded with reactions as clips of the debate spread across platforms. Supporters of AOC praised her courage and authenticity, hailing her as a champion for the marginalized. Fans of Karoline lauded her composure and intellect, celebrating her ability to stay composed under pressure. Hashtags like Leavitt vs AOC trended worldwide, sparking heated discussions among users who debated which perspective they found more convincing. Even those who typically avoided political content found themselves drawn into the conversation. Some admired AOC's unwavering commitment to justice, seeing her as a necessary disruptor in a complacent system. Others appreciated Karoline's emphasis on constructive dialogue, viewing her as a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized landscape. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was undeniable. The debate had ignited a national conversation about the future of America. As the segment drew to a close, the moderator thanked both women for their contributions, though it was clear that the impact of their exchange would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. For Karoline, this moment solidified her reputation as a formidable thinker and communicator. Her ability to remain calm and articulate under fire earned her newfound respect from critics and admirers alike. For AOC, the debate reinforced her role as a polarizing yet influential figure, unafraid to challenge conventional wisdom and push for radical change. In the days that followed, analysts dissected every word spoken during the debate, examining the nuances of each argument. Pundits debated whether Karoline's calm logic or AOC's fiery passion had won the day, though most agreed that both women had made powerful cases for their respective ideologies. The public response was equally divided, with some praising Karoline's rationality and others applauding AOC's boldness. Ultimately, the clash between Karoline Leavitt and AOC served as a microcosm of the broader cultural divide gripping the nation. It highlighted the tension between urgency and patience, revolution and reform, emotion and reason. And while the debate may not have resolved any of the underlying issues, it succeeded in doing something equally important. It reminded people of the power of dialogue. Even in moments of intense disagreement, there is value in listening, learning, and striving to understand perspectives different from our own. For Karoline and AOC, this encounter was far more than just another appearance on a talk show. It was a defining moment that showcased their unique strengths and reaffirmed their roles as leading voices in the ongoing struggle to shape the future of America. And for the millions of people who tuned in, it was a reminder that the path forward requires not just passion or intelligence, but a delicate balance of both. The debate had barely concluded, but its ripple effects were already sweeping across the nation. As the cameras turned off and the studio lights dimmed, Karoline Leavitt took a moment to gather her notes, her expression calm, yet reflective. Across the table, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez exuded the same confident energy she'd carried throughout the discussion. Though the two women hadn't reached any consensus, their exchange had ignited a firestorm of reactions that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. Within hours, clips from the debate flooded social media platforms. Viewers dissected every word, every gesture, and every pause. Supporters of AOC praised her unyielding commitment to justice, applauding her ability to shine a light on the struggles of marginalized communities. Her fiery rhetoric resonated deeply with those who felt disillusioned by the status quo, and hashtags like #AOC for Change trended alongside memes capturing her most passionate moments. For many, she was a symbol of hope, a voice demanding accountability in a system they believed was rigged against them. On the other side, Karoline's performance earned widespread admiration from those who valued civility and logic in political discourse. Her measured tone and data-driven arguments struck a chord with viewers tired of divisive soundbites and emotional manipulation. Fans shared snippets of her rebuttals, highlighting how she dismantled AOC's critiques with precision and poise. Hashtags like #Karoline Keeps It Real began trending as people celebrated her ability to stay composed under pressure while advocating for pragmatic solutions. For some, she represented a refreshing alternative to the chaos often associated with modern politics. As the days passed, the conversation expanded beyond social media. News outlets dedicated entire segments to analyzing the debate, inviting experts, commentators, and even former politicians to weigh in. Some argued that AOC's impassioned style was exactly what America needed to wake up to its flaws, while others contended that Karoline's calm reasoning offered a more sustainable path forward. The divide in opinions mirrored the broader polarization within the country, but one thing was clear: the debate had succeeded in sparking dialogue about critical issues. For Karoline, the aftermath brought both opportunities and challenges. Media appearances poured in, with producers eager to capitalize on her newfound popularity. She appeared on morning shows, late-night talk programs, and even podcasts, where she continued to advocate for constructive dialogue. Her message remained consistent. We can disagree without being disagreeable. Progress comes when we listen to each other and work together. This philosophy resonated with audiences hungry for a less combative approach to politics. Her growing influence also opened doors to new platforms. Invitations to speak at conferences, universities, and think tanks rolled in, allowing her to share her ideas with diverse audiences. In these settings, Karoline expanded on the themes she'd touched upon during the debate, emphasizing the importance of incremental progress and bipartisan cooperation. She became known not just as a commentator but as a bridge builder, someone willing to engage with people from all walks of life, even those who held opposing views. However, not everyone was convinced. Critics accused Karoline of being too idealistic, suggesting that her emphasis on civility overlooked the urgency of systemic problems. Some dismissed her as out of touch, arguing that her polished demeanor masked a lack of understanding of the struggles faced by everyday Americans. These critiques didn't deter her. Instead, they fueled her determination to connect with people on a deeper level. During interviews, she openly acknowledged the limitations of her perspective, admitting that she, like everyone else, had much to learn. Meanwhile, AOC doubled down on her stance, using the debate as a springboard to amplify her message. She addressed her supporters through social media posts and public appearances, framing the exchange as proof that bold ideas were necessary to challenge entrenched power structures. "They'll try to silence us with niceties," she said in one viral video, "but we won't back down. Real change requires courage, and I'm here to fight for it." Her unwavering resolve solidified her status as a polarizing figure. While her detractors criticized her methods as overly simplistic or impractical, her supporters saw her as a fearless advocate for the underserved. Grassroots organizations rallied around her, organizing campaigns and fundraisers to support causes aligned with her vision. For many young activists, AOC wasn't just a politician, she was a movement. Despite their differences, both women found themselves thrust further into the spotlight, their names synonymous with the ideological battle shaping American politics. Their contrasting styles highlighted a fundamental question facing the nation. Should reform come through radical upheaval or gradual evolution? And could there ever be common ground between these seemingly opposing approaches? In the months following the debate, Karoline and AOC occasionally crossed paths again, at events, panels, and even joint interviews orchestrated by networks eager to recreate the magic of their initial clash. Each encounter showcased their unique strengths. AOC's charisma and passion continued to captivate audiences, while Karoline's intellect and composure commanded respect. Though they rarely agreed, their interactions were marked by mutual acknowledgement of each other's dedication to their respective causes. Interestingly, the debate also sparked conversations among everyday citizens. Friends, families, and co-workers debated which perspective they found more compelling. Some leaned toward AOC's call for immediate action, believing that waiting for slow reforms risked leaving vulnerable populations behind. Others sided with Karoline, arguing that lasting change required careful planning and collaboration. Still, others admitted that both women made valid points, acknowledging the complexity of the issues at hand. Perhaps the most significant outcome of the debate was its role in reminding people of the importance of engagement. In an era dominated by echo chambers and partisan divides, the clash between Karoline and AOC served as a powerful example of how differing viewpoints could coexist, and, even enrich public discourse. It challenged viewers to consider perspectives outside their comfort zones and encouraged them to participate in shaping the future of their country. For Karoline, the experience reinforced her belief in the power of respectful dialogue. She used her platform to promote initiatives aimed at fostering understanding across political lines, hosting town halls and roundtable discussions designed to bring people together. Her efforts earned praise from moderates and independents frustrated by the toxicity of contemporary politics. AOC, meanwhile, remained steadfast in her mission to push boundaries and demand accountability. She leveraged her visibility to champion policies addressing climate change, economic inequality, and racial justice. Her persistence inspired countless individuals to get involved in activism, proving that even in the face of resistance, determined voices could drive meaningful change. As time went on, the legacy of the debate grew beyond the individuals involved. It became a touchstone for discussions about leadership, communication, and the future of democracy. Schools incorporated clips of the exchange into lesson plans, encouraging students to analyze rhetorical strategies and evaluate evidence. Scholars wrote papers examining the cultural significance of the moment, framing it as a reflection of broader societal tensions. Ultimately, the debate between Karoline Leavitt and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez transcended the confines of a single television segment. It became a symbol of the ongoing struggle to define America's identity and priorities. Whether viewed as adversaries or complementary forces, the two women embodied the diversity of thought and passion driving the national conversation. And though their paths may have diverged after that fateful day, their impact on the hearts and minds of millions endured, a testament to the enduring power of ideas and the courage to express them. Months after the debate that captivated millions, the dust began to settle, but its impact continued to ripple through American society. Karoline Leavitt and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had become household names, their contrasting styles etched into the collective consciousness of a nation grappling with its identity. While they represented opposing philosophies, their clash served as a mirror reflecting the hopes, fears, and divisions within the country. For many, it was more than just a political showdown. It was a moment that forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their beliefs. Karoline's rise to prominence took on new dimensions in the wake of the debate. She became a sought-after voice for those who believed civility and reason could bridge divides in an increasingly polarized world. Her calm demeanor and articulate arguments resonated particularly with moderate voters, independents, and even some progressives disillusioned by the toxicity of modern politics. She used her platform not only to critique policy, but also to advocate for a cultural shift, a return to thoughtful dialogue where differing opinions were respected rather than dismissed. One of Karoline's most notable initiatives was the launch of a podcast called Common Ground, which brought together individuals from opposite ends of the political spectrum to discuss contentious issues. Each episode featured structured conversations aimed at finding shared values, no matter how small. Guests ranged from grassroots activists to corporate leaders, academics to everyday citizens. The show quickly gained traction, praised for fostering understanding in a time when shouting matches dominated public discourse. Critics accused Karoline of being overly optimistic, but she shrugged off the skepticism, arguing that optimism was necessary if progress was ever going to be made. Her efforts extended beyond media appearances. Karoline partnered with nonprofit organizations focused on civic engagement, hosting workshops across the country to teach people how to have productive discussions about difficult topics. These events attracted diverse crowds, young students eager to make a difference, seasoned activists seeking fresh perspectives, and even skeptics curious about her methods. Through these interactions, Karoline reinforced her belief that meaningful change required patience, empathy, and collaboration. Her message wasn't always popular, especially among those demanding immediate action, but it struck a chord with those weary of endless conflict. On the other side of the ideological spectrum, AOC remained a force to be reckoned with. The debate hadn't softened her stance. If anything, it emboldened her. She doubled down on her commitment to addressing systemic injustices, using her visibility to rally supporters around bold policies like the Green New Deal, universal health care, and student debt forgiveness. Her fiery speeches continued to inspire millions, particularly younger generations, frustrated by what they saw as a broken system, resistant to change. AOC's influence extended far beyond Capitol Hill. She leveraged social media to mobilize her base, turning online activism into real-world action. Campaigns led by her supporters successfully pressured corporations to adopt greener practices, pushed local governments to invest in affordable housing, and raised funds for marginalized communities. For her detractors, she remained a lightning rod of controversy, accused of promoting unrealistic goals or dividing the nation further. But for her supporters, she was a beacon of hope, a leader unafraid to challenge entrenched power structures and demand accountability. Despite their differences, both women faced similar challenges. They were subjected to intense scrutiny, their every move dissected by critics and supporters alike. Misinformation spread about them online, with memes and conspiracy theories distorting their messages. Yet neither allowed the noise to deter them. Instead, they leaned into their roles as public figures, embracing the responsibility that came with influencing millions. Their resilience inspired countless others to speak up, whether through art, activism, or simply engaging in conversations with friends and family. The legacy of their debate also played out in unexpected ways. It sparked a wave of interest in political literacy, with schools incorporating lessons on rhetoric, critical thinking, and media literacy into curriculums. Teachers reported increased enthusiasm among students eager to understand the nuances of governance and advocacy. Colleges invited both Karoline and AOC to deliver keynote speeches, drawing record attendance as young minds sought guidance on navigating an uncertain future. In the broader cultural landscape, the debate highlighted the tension between idealism and pragmatism, a theme explored in books, documentaries, and even fictional works inspired by the event. Artists created murals depicting the two women locked in symbolic conversation, while playwrights penned scripts imagining what might happen if they collaborated instead of clashed. The imagery underscored a deeper truth. Despite their differences, Karoline and AOC shared a common goal: to create a better America. Yet the question lingered: could such opposing forces ever truly find common ground? In rare moments, glimpses of possibility emerged. During a charity gala months later, the two women crossed paths again. Cameras captured their brief interaction, a handshake accompanied by smiles and polite conversation. Neither offered details about what was said, but the image alone sent waves of speculation across social media. Was this a sign of reconciliation? A hint of potential collaboration? Or simply a professional courtesy? While the answer remained elusive, the encounter symbolized something greater: the enduring human capacity for connection even amid profound disagreement. It reminded people that behind the headlines and hashtags were individuals driven by passion and purpose, each striving to leave the world better than they found it. As the years passed, the debate between Karoline Leavitt and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez became a touchstone for discussions about leadership and communication. Scholars studied it as a case study in rhetorical strategy, analyzing how tone, evidence, and emotional appeal shaped public perception. Activists referenced it as proof that ideas, no matter how divergent, could spark meaningful conversations, and ordinary citizens revisited clips of the exchange whenever they needed a reminder that democracy thrived not on unanimity, but on the free exchange of ideas. For Karoline, the experience cemented her role as a champion of constructive dialogue. She continued to push for reforms grounded in cooperation, earning respect even from former critics. Her journey taught her that change often happened incrementally, and that sometimes planting seeds of understanding mattered more than achieving immediate victories. For AOC, the debate reinforced her status as a trailblazer unafraid to challenge the status quo. She remained steadfast in her belief that radical action was necessary to dismantle oppressive systems, inspiring a generation of activists to dream bigger and fight harder. Her unwavering determination proved that courage, conviction, and compassion could coexist, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Ultimately, the story of Karoline Leavitt and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wasn't just about two women with opposing views. It was about the enduring struggle to define what it meant to be American. It was about the tension between urgency and patience, revolution and reform, emotion and reason. And it was about the power of dialogue to illuminate truths, challenge assumptions, and inspire action. Though their paths may never fully align, the legacy of their encounter serves as a testament to the resilience of democracy. In a world often divided by fear and mistrust, their debate reminded us of one undeniable truth. Progress begins when we dare to listen, not just to agree, but to understand.